there, hope you're doing okay. I was just about to cut up this hickory log on my bandsaw and I thought, my camera's out here, why don't I make a quick video about how I do that? So I don't really do this all that often. It's just if somebody gives me a log or a piece of firewood, it gives me a chance to experiment and see what it's like to cut it up, see how it dries, stuff like that. And sometimes I'll make stuff out of it, but most of the stuff's still drying. So typically what I do is that I take a piece of plywood or something that's really straight and I screw it to the bottom. That way we have something that can go up against the fence as we're cutting. And you'll see why we do that in a second. But first let me screw this in place. Now I want to get as many cuts out of this as possible, so I'm trying to put this piece of plywood over as far as I can while still keeping it on the bottom. And usually I use a 2x4 or something that's a little bit stiffer. But this should work as long as this board stays flat. Now what's nice about this bandsaw fence is that I can have it in two orientations. I can have it parallel with the blade, or I can have it perpendicular with the blade, like this. And this is nice because it lets me run a board right up against this little thin piece while the log overhangs a little bit, and that's typically how I do the first couple cuts. Alright, now we're going to flip it. Alright, now that we have two relatively flat faces to work with, I'm going to go ahead and take off the straight edge, and yeah, a lot thicker piece of plywood or 2x4 would definitely have been a lot nicer. And now we just cut the rest of it up. Alright, the last thing that I do is I cut off all the bark so that way bugs don't have a way for which they can get into the wood. Alright, so there's the mess. There's the saw, and then over here we have our take-home pay. So I went ahead and cut up the second log and all these pieces, and one of these short pieces is from the 4-foot log. These 4 pieces are from the 2-foot log, and I cut everything typical to about 1 inch thick. That way it's a 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch after it's planed down. And the thing you have to do though before we stack this up is we gotta clean the saw. This is wet wood. The trees have been a little bit dead. It had finally fallen over after being dead for a while. It's got a lot of bugs in it. You can see a lot of holes in it everywhere, which I'll just fill in. It's not a big deal. But first, before we stack the wood, we absolutely have to clean the saw. We have to get all the wet sawdust, because this is wet wood. You have to get all out of the saw. That way the saw doesn't start to rust. And I have a blower. I can do this outside. You can use an air compressor. I also have one. I just like using the blower outside. It's a lot easier.